My heart hammered against my ribs as I squeezed through the dusty doorway of Once Upon a Thread, a vintage clothing store tucked away on a forgotten corner of Main Street. The air inside hung heavy with the scent of mothballs and forgotten memories. Sunlight struggled to pierce the grime-coated windows, casting the mismatched collection of clothes in an eerie half-light. I was on a mission to find the perfect wedding dress. My Pinterest board overflowed with flowing tulle and elegant lace, but nothing in the sterile, brightly lit bridal shops had sparked that "this is the one" feeling. Maybe a little imperfection was what I needed, a touch of history clinging to the fabric. And then I saw it. Hanging on a lone mannequin in the far corner, a dress whispered promises of a bygone era. Crafted from ivory silk that shimmered like moonlight on water, it cascaded down the mannequin's form in a symphony of delicate lace and pearls. It was breathtaking. As I approached, a shiver danced down my spine. The air around the dress seemed to crackle with an unseen energy. Tentatively, I reached out, my fingers brushing the cool silk. A warmth bloomed beneath my touch, a current that surged up my arm and settled in my chest, a strange sense of belonging. That's a stunner, isn't it? A woman materialized from the shadows, her eyes twinkling like polished obsidian. The store owner, her name tag read Esmeralda, exuded an aura of mystery that perfectly matched the atmosphere of the shop. "It is," I breathed, mesmerized. "But is it for sale?" Esmeralda's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "For the right bride," she said, her voice a husky rasp. "It's been waiting for a long time." Ignoring a prickle of unease, I slipped into the dressing room. The dress slid onto my body like a second skin, conforming to every curve as if it had been made for me. Gazing at my reflection in the dusty mirror, I looked like a vision. The dress whispered elegance and a timeless beauty I never knew I possessed. But a strange feeling gnawed at the edges of my euphoria. The silk felt cool against my skin, almost clammy. And in the depths of the ornate lace around the neckline, I swore I saw a flicker of movement, a hint of something alive trapped within the fabric. That night, the first nightmare arrived. A woman in a tattered wedding dress, her face obscured by a veil, stood weeping in a desolate garden. Her mournful cries echoed in my ears, a chilling premonition that wouldn't fade with the morning light. As the days ticked by, the occurrences escalated. Unexplained chills would crawl up my spine, the air around the dress growing colder with each passing night. The nightmares became a nightly torment, the weeping bride replaced by suffocating darkness and unseen hands clawing at me from the shadows. The dress itself seemed to be changing. At first, I dismissed it as nerves playing tricks on me. But then I noticed it. The hem, which had brushed the floor on the day I bought it, now seemed a touch too short. The delicate lace, once pristine white, held the faintest tinge of yellow. A feeling of dread, cold and clammy, settled in my gut. One morning, the final confirmation of my suspicions arrived. I went to check on the dress, hanging limply on my bedroom door, and let out a scream. The once perfect fit now hung loosely, the fabric dull and lifeless. But the most horrifying detail was the face that had materialized in the intricate embroidery on the bodice. A grotesque caricature of the weeping woman from my nightmares, her empty eyes locked on mine. Panic clawed at my throat. This wasn't just a dress. It was something evil. And it was too late to back out. The wedding was in 2 days. Terror gnawed at me like a starving rat. The wedding dress, once a breathtaking symbol of my upcoming nuptials, now resembled a decaying shroud. Frantic, I called Esmeralda, the enigmatic owner of Once Upon a Thread. The phone rang endlessly, then voicemail picked up. Esmeralda, who always seemed to appear when needed, had vanished. Desperate, I turned to the internet, scouring forums and message boards for any mention of the dress or the store. What I found were fragmented stories, whispers passed down through generations, all centered around a cursed wedding dress, a harbinger of misfortune for any bride who dared to wear it. The weeping woman, it turned out, was the spirit of a young bride who'd been murdered on her wedding day, forever trapped in the dress, seeking vengeance on the living. Panic morphed into a steely resolve. I wouldn't become another victim. But how to break the curse? The answer, if there was one, lay hidden within the cryptic stories online. One recurring detail sparked a flicker of hope, a mention of moonlight and a ritual involving returning the dress to its source. The full moon wasn't for another week. My wedding was in 2 days. Frantic, I scoured historical records, searching for any mention of the dress origin. Finally, a breakthrough. The dress, it turned out, had belonged to a woman named Amelia Thorne, who'd disappeared on her wedding day over a century ago. The records hinted at a possible unmarked grave by the old, abandoned lighthouse on the outskirts of town. There was a slim chance, a desperate gamble. Ignoring the absurdity of it all, I confided in my best friend, Sarah. At first, she thought I was losing it, wedding jitters manifesting as full-blown delusions. But the raw terror in my eyes, the desperate pleas, finally convinced her. Together, we devised a plan. Under the cloak of night, armed with the cursed dress and a shovel, we set out for the desolate lighthouse. The wind howled like a banshee, and the crashing waves seemed to echo the weeping woman's mournful cries. Finding the unmarked grave, overgrown with weeds and shrouded in an unsettling chill, took longer than expected. Just as dawn began to paint the horizon with streaks of pink and orange, we reached the shallow grave. Following the cryptic instructions from the online forum, written by someone claiming to be a descendant of Amelia Thorne, I laid the dress on the freshly turned earth. Sarah, ever the skeptic, muttered a silent prayer under her breath. Then, the most terrifying thing happened. The dress, once lifeless, seemed to writhe and twist, the embroidered face contorting in a silent scream. A cold wind whipped around us, the air thick with unseen energy. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the worst. But instead of an attack, there was a sudden calmness. The wind died down, the oppressive feeling lifted. When I opened my eyes, the writhing dress lay still, the embroidered face neutral once more. A single, pristine white dove soared from the grave, circling us once before disappearing into the rising sun. Relief washed over me, warm and welcome. We made our way back to town, the weight of the experience hanging heavy between us. The wedding was off, of course. Explaining that to my devastated fiancé was a whole other ordeal, but that paled in comparison to the horror I'd just escaped. News travels fast in a small town. The story of the cursed wedding dress spread like wildfire. Once upon a thread remained closed, the windows boarded up. As for me, I became a reluctant local legend, a cautionary tale for any bride seeking a touch of the past in their wedding attire. The experience left its mark. I never wore white again, and the sound of the wind at night still sends shivers down my spine. But through it all, I learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, the most beautiful things can hide the darkest secrets.